In today's video, I wanted to continue with the main storyline featured in The Witcher. Last time, the adventure had just begun. I took control of the series' protagonist, Geralt of Rivia. At the start of the game, it stated that Geralt has been MIA for 5 years. Then, one day, out of the blue, he's found by his guildmates dazed and confused. The Witchers take him back to Kael Morhen, where hopefully the wheels start turning again. However, there's no time, as a group of criminals launches an assault on the fortress. The attack is led by a mysterious mage, a crook known as the Professor, and another sorcerer named Sephirah. This served as a great way for the player to learn the basics for the Witcher's combat and controls. In terms of resistance, Kael Morhen's only defenders are the Witchers, Vizima, Escolt, Lambert, Leo, and Geralt, as well as a sorceress named Triss. By the end of the Salamandra's assault, Geralt, Leo, and Triss are facing down Sephirah, the Professor, and the mage. Triss gets wounded while battling their mage, and Leo ends up dying at the hands of the Professor. What's more, the criminals run off with the Witcher mutagen, a powerful compound that can genetically transform humans. This was definitely a devastating blow to the Witchers, as one of their own was killed and their secrets were stolen. After ridding Kael Morhen of straggler bandits, healing Triss, and exploring her past connection with Geralt, the survivors held a funeral for Leo. It was here that the remaining Witchers abandoned the fortress and set off to the four corners of the world. Geralt ended up traveling to the kingdom of Temeria. The first chapter had him stuck in the outskirts of Vizima. The primary goals were to gain entrance to the city, as well as figure out the village's beast problem. Geralt ended up becoming acquainted with NPCs like Alvin, the Reverend, Abigail, Odo, Heron, and Mikkel. His adventures saw him facing off Barghests and the Beast, mythical creatures that served as omens for the town's wrongdoings. While on the job, Geralt ended up performing tasks for the village's most influential men. This involved slaying Equinops, Drowners, Ghouls, and the Barghests. These quests were done in order to receive references. The hope was that the Witcher would be trusted enough to receive a pass into Vizima. Along the way, Geralt also ran into NPCs from his past, like Shani and Zoltan. For the time being, they served as characters to help piece together Geralt's past and to guide him along his current journey. By the end of the chapter, Geralt was working with the witch, Abigail. Up until this point, most villagers assumed that Abigail was the one to summon the beast. However, she insisted that she had no part in it. Together, her and Geralt had learned that the beast was brought on by the villagers' wicked deeds. Moreover, the four influential men that Geralt had previously done work for, those were the main culprits when it came to unintentionally summoning the beast and the Barghests. He learned that each man had recently done something horrible and that they've all had dealings with the Salamandra. After wiping out the bandit den in the village and learning a little more about their leader, Azar Javed, Geralt was faced with a choice. Does he side with Abigail and accuse the men of their wrongdoings, or does he side with the influential men and condemn Abigail? Choosing the side of reason, Geralt scared off the Reverend and escorted the witch safely back to town. In doing so, the beast and its Barghests finally challenged him and Abigail. Defeating it once and for all, the town could now rest easily knowing they'd no longer be hunted by hellhounds. After that, the Reverend, Heron, Odo, and a few more villagers confronted Geralt and Abigail. This served as the village's final battle. On the Reverend's corpse, he had the coveted pass to Vizima. With it now being in Geralt's hands, he escorted Shani to the city and sought out Mikkel, the one and only member of the guilty party to show remorse. However, it ended up being a setup. Geralt was captured and thrown into jail. While down in the dungeon, he witnessed the Professor getting released. The two men exchanged some words, and now Geralt's wondering how he finds a way out of here. This is where the story continues. Running around the cell, I get a good look at who's in here with me. One of the NPCs is obviously the aggressive brute. As it stands, I wouldn't mind seeing Geralt hand him a new one. Most of the others in here though are thieves and crooks, likely folks who just had a bad hand dealt to them. One of the prisoners in here though is an elven convict. Chatting with him, he offers more than a flavorful one-liner. He tells me that today's his last day on the continent, as tomorrow he's headed for the gallows. The elf's dying wish is simple. He wants to play a game of dice. At this point in the story, I've probably been asked by about half a dozen NPCs to play this dice poker game. Figuring this to be a part of the get out of jail process, I took him up on it. At first, I didn't really understand what was going on, but after game 2, I realized that yeah, it's the same concept as poker, but with dice. Don't judge me. I ended up winning the first game with a high 5 straight, and the second with a 3 of a kind. Definitely not a bad gig if I want some extra orens. However, my theory ended up being right. Passing the time with the elf would end up presenting some opportunities.
All right, you maggots. The king in his mercy will pardon whoever subdues the cockatrice in the sewers.
Pardon? What about half the kingdom, the princess's hand in marriage?
Clever. Watch what you say, Witcher. Political jokes could get you in trouble.
I'll slay the monster.
Too late. There's another volunteer.
I'm the better candidate.
The creep in the corner claims he'll defeat it bare-fisted.
Which creep? Yo-ho! That tub of lard? You're kidding.
You want freedom? Fight for it. Whoever wins faces the cockatrice.
Piece of cake.
I guess I get to have my cake and eat it too. Facing down the muscle man in a fist fight, it was pretty much like my brawl with Fat Fred back in the village. Every time he swings, I put my hands up and cover Geralt's chin. Whenever he's open, I get a lick or two in and repeat the process. Before I knew it, I was letting off a string of combos and the muscle man wasn't getting back up. Oddly enough, at the end of the fight, he attributed my win to the use of magic. I didn't let off a single cast during that whole tussle, but I guess those are some of the prejudices that the Witchers face.
Congratulations. You won the right to slay the beast.
I'm almost proud.
Want to slay the beast, or would you rather just stand there?
I need a weapon.
That's funny. We recently confiscated a Witcher's sword.
Where?
Not your business. Jethro, bring that silver sword.
The one we found at Thaler's?
Yes, idiot. That one.
Can I have it?
Get it from Jethro. The rest of your gear's in deposit for afterwards.
Fine.
One more thing. I'll pay extra for the monster's head, provided it's undamaged.
I'll see what I can do.
You know what they say about luck when preparation meets opportunity. Chatting with Jethro, he hands me the Witcher's silver sword as well as a potion. During the conversation, Geralt makes a comment about hunting down the professor. Interestingly, Jethro reacts by saying that that'd be a dumb move. Not because of the risk, but because it'd be better to strike at the boss, as are Javet. The Salamander lackeys are always ending up back in jail and it'd be a never-ending cycle. Cut off the head of the snake though, and who takes its place? Interesting anecdotes aside, Geralt descends to the sewers and begins his hunt. Apart from the cockatrice, the bowels of Vizima are also home to drowners. They certainly won't take kindly to Geralt hunting in their domain. However, I'm not the only one down here who's looking for the beast. It just so happens that the cockatrice has caught the attention of a whole other monster hunting organization.
Oh, you're a Witcher?
Indeed.
White hair, vertical pupils, signs of mutation?
Skip the medical exam.
Forgive me, I meant no harm. I'm Siegfried, a knight of the Order of the Flaming Rose.
I'm Geralt.
I've heard much praise concerning the combat skills of Witchers.
If you don't mind, I have some work to do down here, and I'd like to get it done fast.
A cockatrice, correct? That's why I'm here.
Let's talk.
Yes?
Think you can kill the cockatrice?
The sacred flame will guide me.
What prompted you to enter the sewers after a beast?
It threatens Vizima. The Order's been fighting beast for a while, rather effectively too.
Wait, that's Witcher's work.
You Witchers are relics and few in number. You're no competition. The Order demands no payment for protecting humans.
I suppose fairies funded your armor and castles.
I've no desire to argue. We're both here. There's no reason to await the other's turn, especially while there are drowners here too. Let's join forces instead. I long to see your combat skills, and I assure you, my sword is at your disposal.
Agreed. Let's go.
You lead.
Choosing to take on Siegfried as a companion, him and I traverse the sewers in search of the cockatrice. With the silver sword now at my disposal, the game informs me of its mechanic. The silver sword is most effective against creatures and monsters. Meanwhile, the steel sword has more promise against animals and people. Luckily, I get to test out my new blade on some appropriate foes. At the moment, I didn't necessarily feel the difference in combat, but I'm sure as time goes on, it will be more noticeable. After wading through the sewers and reaching a couple of dead ends, the beast finally makes an appearance. It flies in behind Siegfried and aggroes onto us. Luckily for me, it seemed like the dragon-bird hybrid monster focused most of its efforts on the Knight of the Order. This made it so that I could focus on overall DPS, and within no time at all, it was down for the count. After the hunt, Siegfried and Geralt discuss where the closest exit is. They decide that Siegfried's way of entry is the most reliable, and before setting off, he reminds Geralt to collect the cockatrice's head. I have to say, I had my doubts about him, but so far, Siegfried has proven to be a reliable ally. As the two men near the doorway, Geralt hears footsteps in the distance. Before long, two masked assassins come rushing in and attack the both of us. They were certainly within our skill level, but as Siegfried mentions, it's strange that they'd ventured down here, and even stranger that they knew where Geralt would be.
Friends of yours?
You could say so. The thugs with the salamander sign have been bothering me for a while.
Who knew you'd be in the sewers?
The captain of the guard, the loon from the jail, and the prisoners. I fought the cockatrice for my freedom.
A limited number of suspects. You'll likely solve the mystery when you find the leader of those bandits. I have a friend in Vizima, a detective. See him for help.
Where are you headed?
I have things to attend to at my quarters. Then I'll venture out in search of beasts, as the world is still filled with them.
You did well, Siegfried. Glad we met. I need to recover my things.
Make sure you get everything. Jethro is known to have sticky fingers.
Let's get out of here.
Here's the key for the passage to town. A few days ago, I locked the door to keep the cockatrice in.
Thanks. I'd rather not go back the way I came.
We might meet again if ever you visit the sewers. At times I venture down here in search of monsters.
Ah, your sacred mission of protecting humankind?
Your sarcasm is unnecessary. We're on the same side, Witcher. You'll realize this one day.
Farewell, and thanks.
If you ever need me, I'll be at my quarters in Vizima.
Signing off with Siegfried, it's not the last that I see of him, but for now, our paths deviate. Filling my pockets with gold and loot, I took the passage topside and can finally start to explore Vizima. As Geralt puts it, the city's temple quarter isn't the nicest place. Because of that, no doubt the Salamander's base can't be far. Ascending to the main streets, the private eye that Siegfried mentioned lives right here. How convenient. Paying him a visit is definitely high on the to-do list. However, it comes second to recovering Geralt's gear. Wandering through the dark streets of Vizima, it's mostly filled with guards, beggars, and sick people. While I questioned it before, I suppose there really is a plague running rampant through the city. Reaching the dungeon, I first checked in with Vincent. Mice was true to his word and granted me my freedom. However, he also asked that I respect the city's quarantine. For the time being, I'm stuck in the temple district. Handing him the cockatrice's head, Vincent pays me out 400 orens for the trophy. This is definitely a hefty sum, and for what was to come, I'd be needing all the gold I could get my hands on. The last thing I asked the guard about was the Salamandra. Vizima's officials are investigating the bandits, and they have a lead on Azar Javed. Within the next few days, they're going to perform a sting operation on the district's warehouse. With luck, they'll be able to capture or kill the leaders of the organization. Fingers crossed it's that easy for them. The next person I spoke with was Jethro. The conversation was as standard as it gets. He also told me I was free to go, reminded me about the trophy to Vincent, and he gave me access to my equipment. Securing all of my gear, Geralt looked more like a witcher than ever. 2 long swords on his back, an axe on his hip, and a dagger on the other. As the old saying goes, look good, play good. From here, there's quite a lot of information to go over. Before organizing myself, I re-spoke with Jethro and asked further questions about the professor. Geralt wanted to know why he was released, and after some back and forth, the guard tells me that he was bailed out. The officials don't know who forked over the money, but they do know that it was transferred from Vivaldi's Dwarven Bank. It's definitely a lead to look into. The final piece of dialogue involved asking Jethro about his sneezing. At first, I thought it was early signs of the plague. As it would turn out, it's actually due to substance abuse. Jethro is taking this drug called Fistek. He tells me that his dealer is a man named Coleman, and he spends most of his time at the Hairy Bear. Believe it or not, this information would come in handy, as sooner than later, I'd need a way to bribe the jailer. So from here, a plethora of new plot lines have opened up. I need to talk to the fence who sold the Witcher sword, Thaler. I need to look into multiple suspects, for now just Vincent and Vivaldi, and I need to go see the private investigator. As you'll soon come to see, Chapter 2 is filled with investigative work. The game has Geralt running up, down, back and forth through the streets of Vizima. It's an incredibly detailed and thrilling investigation. There are a lot of new people to meet and work with, and there are also a lot of new enemies that get thrown into the mix. Making my way over to the PI, I couldn't help but notice that just a little further down, my new friend Siegfried was standing by the gates.
Geralt, good to see you. Where are you going?
To the dike.
No passage. Captain forbids it.
Why?
Captain's orders. Talk to him.
Gentlemen, that's no way to treat a hero. Geralt, the witcher that saved Vizima from a terrible cockatrice.
A hero? Well, that changes things.
He's almost one of us.
In that case, please pass, Master Geralt. We'll drink your health at the inn.
Thanks, Siegfried. A surprise in the sewers. A night of the Flaming Rose, soaked in stench from head to foot. I usually work alone, but this was an opportunity to see a knight in action. I must say he did rather well for a human. That was rare gratitude he showed.
Another excellent demonstration that Geralt's actions have consequences. Sometimes they can prove to be negative, but other times they can be for the better. You never know what kind of benefits can come from opening up to people and working together. Because of Siegfried, I now have access to a different district of Vizima, an avenue that I'll be exploring in due time. For now, my focus is on the private eye and what he can bring to the table.
Well, what do we have here?
I'm Geralt of Rivia.
A warrior like no other. Your legend precedes you. How can I help?
I'm looking for some information. Is this where I'll find it?
Good question. I used to work for the lawyers Codringer and Fenn. Satisfied?
The names mean nothing to me, but I'll assume that's a recommendation.
As a professional, you understand information has its price.
I'll pay.
I'm all ears, White Wolf.
I'm interested in the people who wear salamander pins.
Just so happens I know a thing or two. Before I go on, I wouldn't mind knowing what your interest in the case is.
Azar Javed. Name mean anything to you?
I've heard it. Why are you looking for Javed?
Let's just say my boots do a rendezvous with his ass.
Usually I charge for information, but I'll give you this bit for free. I've been working on that case for a while.
Go on.
Azar Javed, a Zerrikanian sorcerer, leads Salamandra. He's more dangerous than a pit of Kikimores, but unfortunately out of my reach. With his contacts and resources, he's got almost free reign in the city.
I got a taste of his abilities. Anything else?
I suspect Salamandra has built a large-scale operation, with gold simply greasing the wheels of their political ambitions. They're conducting genetic experiments, dangerous ones. Regular thugs wouldn't have the knowledge or means.
Who's working for Javed? Any guesses?
The captain of the guard who dropped that investigation disappears nights. Maybe you can squeeze some information out of him.
Is that all?
We might have one more lead. The city guards detained someone who could provide information.
The guards at the city jail?
Yeah. Find a way to question that prisoner. In the meantime, learn what you can from the guards.
Count on it. People open up to me all the time.
His information could be priceless. Good luck.
Know anything more about the salamander prisoner?
He may be one of the leaders, though in this town the guards capture pawns while the big fish swim free. We'll know for certain once you question him.
We'll see.
Just one thing. I think you're being followed.
Any suggestions?
Wait here a while. Make them nervous.
Surprise those who want to surprise you. I'll leave at midnight.
The Witcher is taking his time.
He must have left a different way. No matter.
Seems true. I assume the trap is set?
Indeed. Tend to your tasks in the trade quarter.
I'll leave the matter to our best agent.
Well, that makes for a few more leads to follow. A prisoner who might have some information and a corrupt guard captain. Honestly, none of this surprises me. Furthermore, the Salamandra know that I'm a free man. This little attack outside of Raymond's house is just the start. They know that I'm hot on their trail, and because of that, they're going to do all that they can to throw me off of it. Peeking at the journal, all quests currently point to finding this prisoner. The best way to get leads on him, at least for now, is to visit my old friend, Jethro. Returning to the city dungeon, I spoke with the jailer and had begun to ask him some more questions. I could inquire about the salamander prisoner, as well as King Foltest's interest on the professor. The former, however, wouldn't get answered. Jethro didn't feel comfortable discussing it, at least not without a little bribe in the form of, quote, powder. As for Foltest having it out for the professor, the jailer said that the king's bounty is actually from his private treasury, so it almost sounds like a personal vendetta. The conversation leads Jethro to telling Geralt about someone who pays for salamander pins, confirmations on their deaths. The sponsor themselves is anonymous, but their messenger can be found at midnight in the Hairy Bear Tavern. As it stands, it looks like the inn is going to be my next point of interest. However, on my way over, I stumbled onto something quite convenient. Right around the corner from the dungeon is Thaler's house. Thaler is the fence who sold the Witcher's sword and who, for some reason, has a deal with Vizima's guards.
I'm a fence. I buy and sell.
What you deal in?
Everything worthwhile. So what'll it be? We doing some ploughing business?
The city guards found a Witcher's sword at your place.
First of all, it's the cocksucking guards. Second, why do you care?
Another Witcher, Berengar, came to see you.
Well, it wasn't his fucking razor.
How do you know that?
I have your boyfriend's other property. The sword I got elsewhere.
Other property?
Right. Meaning not his sword, got it? Like his undershorts that he pissed all over or something.
So where did you get the sword?
What'll you give me if I tell you?
I'll stop short of gutting you.
Fair offer. I bought it from a man at the Hairy Bear Tavern.
Care to describe him?
No need, he's the most famous dice player around. Out fucking standing, a real goddamn magician.
How did you get Berengar's property?
Stubborn-ass fellow, aren't you? From a middleman.
Where do I find him?
At the Hairy Bear Tavern. Doubt he'd want to talk to you. Man named Coleman.
The objectives at Hairy Bear Tavern are starting to rack up. That's 2 missions for Coleman, 1 mission for the gambler, and another one for the messenger. Right now, all signs literally point to the inn. After a brief meditation at Thaler's, a concept I still find quite entertaining, I started to trek to the tavern. Imagine getting grilled by a Witcher and then they insist on meditating in your living room for the next 9 hours. Talk about a power move. During the daytime in Vizima's temple quarter, the city's certainly a lot livelier. Don't get me wrong, it still has its fair share of sideways characters, but the streets are full and active. While wandering about, Geralt spots the St. Lebioda hospital. According to his monologue, this is where they throw the peasants who are suffering from the plague. Forced into a conversation with the guard, he says that no one's allowed in. The fear is that visitors will end up spreading pestilence throughout the rest of the city. Geralt's adamant that he gets access inside though, so I'm more than certain that I'll be back. Something else to note about Vizima, the Order of the Flaming Rose seems to have a greater presence here than I could have imagined. Their knights are posted throughout the city, they have their own headquarters, and they offer services like smithing and bartering. I guess it's for the better that I got on Siegfried's good side early on, or else I imagine Geralt might have been a little more standoffish. Now, as for the Hairy Bear Tavern, unsurprisingly, it wasn't in the best area of town. It was in the slums of Vizima, and judging from all the bouncers, beggars, thugs, bandits, ruffians, and escorts, it's probably frequented by a specific type of person. Heading on into the tavern, I ran Geralt through the ringer. There were quite a few NPCs in here that I could speak with, and let me tell you, I talked with almost all of them. For example, Zoltan Chive was having a drink in the corner. Chatting with him first, the conversation didn't exactly go where I thought it would. After talking about our struggles entering the city, Zoltan got into his love life. It was my fault, I asked how he was doing, but still, not really what I came here for. The next person I spoke with though was a thug named Ramsmeat, and he was a little more interesting than Chivi.
What you want, freak?
I have some questions.
You haven't the faintest idea who you're talking to, freak. 1 word, and before you count to 3, you'll be facing a dozen hardened assassins.
You'll be dead before you count to 3.
Well, the cub growls, but does it bite? I could use someone for wet work.
I'll think about it.
Relax. A rhetorical question. I know how you handle the Provost and the Mishlat brothers' crew. I'll answer your questions as a token of goodwill.
What do you do?
I'm the king of the underworld, Wolf. Whores, thieves, murderers, they all answer to me. Come and see me when you need work.
I've been to Thaler's place, found a few things there. Belong to someone I've been looking for.
Yeah? So what?
They belong to a Witcher. How'd you get them?
We found them. Your friend was in trouble, scheming with Salamandra. Ask the people in the swamp. That's where we found those trinkets.
Some useful information, but rest assured, Ram's meat plays a bigger role in Chapter 2 than the conversation led on. The next person I spoke to was a dwarf named Monroe Broyes. This was probably the least relevant conversation. Monroe recognized Geralt from his past, something about helping exiles from the war. He doesn't really expand on it though, probably my fault for not asking follow-up questions, and we pretty much left it at that. The next person I went to see was this Coleman, Jethro's powder dealer. Unfortunately, Coleman shut me out fairly quickly into the conversation, but again, my fault. I started off strong by asking about the Salamandra, and Coleman seemed to get spooked. He told me to leave him be and that I should shove off. Our conversation abruptly ended, and I was briefly banned from speaking to him again. Definitely not my finest work. In any case, the cavalry keeps charging. Chatting with the innkeeper next, I paid for a room and waited around until midnight. Luckily for me, this gave Coleman plenty of time to cool off. Revisiting our chat, I stayed away from the Salamandra topic and stuck to buying fist tech off of him. 100 orens was a pretty hefty price for a lead, but Jethro was my best shot at landing the prisoner. Admittedly, I just couldn't let Coleman's shadiness go, and after offering him a few drinks, I did try again with Salamandra. Of course, it didn't work, and all I ended up getting was a wasted Geralt. This should make the rest of the investigation even more fun. The last person I spoke to in the Hairy Bear Tavern was this mysterious messenger. Since it was midnight, I suppose he was here to collect those salamander pins. Again, I learned my lesson here. I came off too strong and shot straight for the intimidation route. Threatening to beat him up if he didn't tell me who his sponsor was, the messenger wasn't having any of it, and he too told me to shove off. That must be the line of the day for Vizima. Everyone's insistent on saying it to Geralt. Even though 90% of my investigation here led to busts, I'd say that 10% was all I really needed. With the fist tech in my inventory, I could bribe Jethro and learn about the Salamandra prisoner. As a side note, I really don't like getting Geralt drunk in this game. The screen gets all blurry and distorted, and boy does it kill my eyes to look at it. I literally had to focus on the minimap in the upper corner, or else I'd be squinting and blinking the whole way there.
I never turn down good fizz tech.
Tell me about that Salamandra prisoner.
But I hardly know anything.
Where is he?
They took him to Lebioda Hospital.
Thanks.
That's about as much useful information that I can get here. The rest of the conversation is about Taller and where to find him. Certainly not the most up-to-date topic right now. However, there was a side quest that involved further interrogation on Taller. Plus, he's one of the most convenient means of meditating and passing the time. Chatting with the fence again, the first thing I asked him was why the guards leave him be. Apparently, the secret was to be an asset to all sides of the equation. Make a deal with the bandits, make one with the guards, and another with the thieves. This makes Thaler an important player to all of Vizima's organizations, thus granting him immunity. The next thing I asked him about was the Salamandra. He seemed to get pretty heated at the topic. Thaler dislikes them just as much as the next guy and has no clue what they're up to. From here, I can get into a mechanic for the Witcher that becomes reoccurring throughout this chapter. Geralt is trying to find the person or people who are linked to the Salamandra. Because of that, I can grill important NPCs on their affiliation with the gang. I can choose to go either good cop or bad cop, but as I've pointed out somewhat recently, a lot of NPCs don't take kindly to Geralt's accusations. Sometimes this burns bridges, but luckily, Thaler is more than happy to explain things from his perspective. His deal with the Vizima guard is in place, specifically so that the Salamandra don't bother him. For now, I'll buy what he's selling, but really, the investigation has only just begun. In any case, my next move is to enter Lebioda Hospital. With luck, I'll be able to chat with the Salamandra prisoner there. First things first though, I needed to figure out a way past the guard on duty. My two options were to either flash a signet ring or to pay him a bribe. Unfortunately, the Reverend's Ring of Eternal Fire doesn't do a whole lot of good in the city, so offering up a handful of orens, the guard still wasn't biting. Feeling cheap and like I could have found another signet ring somewhere in the city, I left the post and went digging. Spoiler, I didn't end up finding it, and I'd be back to pay the toll soon enough. However, what I found at Vizima was arguably more interesting than any ring. Along the Merchant Street region, I managed to find Shawnee's home. So that sort of answered my question on her whereabouts. I guess she didn't try to help Geralt at all and just went back to living her daily life. Some friend. Entering Shawnee's home, the first thing that happened was Geralt getting accosted by her grandmother. She walked right up to me, shouted in my face about how the end was nigh, and that it's hard to live in a cold house at an old age. The conversation with her grandmother is always brief, but the longer Geralt lingers on the main floor, the more she'll walk right over to him and spout some more nonsense. It's quite comical. But it's not what I came here for. Breaking free and heading upstairs, I finally found Shawnee. However, I don't think I caught her at the best of times. For now, the conversation between Shawnee and Geralt isn't the most interesting. She wonders how he found her, he says that he knew she had a house in the area, she complains about her pay, really it's small talk at best. However, Shawnee then goes into some of her past trauma that Geralt was seemingly involved with. She talks about something called the Battle of Brenna and the massacre. It used to give her sleepless nights, but now she says that she's used to the suffering and feels refreshed from it. It's a little bit of flavor lore, a peek behind the curtain into Geralt's past, but there's not much more to go off of there. The whole back and forth does bring on a new quest though, and knowing where Shawnee lives 100% comes in handy for later on in the chapter. Feeling ready to return to the hospital and fork over some orans, I left her home and found myself the subject of another assassin attack. These are some of Azar Jabbit's thugs, and it appears as though in the nighttime, Geralt's at risk for being ambushed. However, more often than not, some good Samaritan will come along and help me defeat my assailants. It's almost always a dwarf too, which is interesting. Because of that, the dwarves have quickly become my favorite race in the game. Time to step up elves and humans. In any case, reaching St. Lebioda Hospital and coughing up 40 gold, the guard finally lets me on through. This allows Geralt to have access in and out of the hospital whenever I need it. The ambience in here is quite different. While there's obviously pain and suffering on the streets of Vizima, there's certainly a lot of pain and suffering just in here. Sick men and women are lying on makeshift beds, keeled over and crying out loud. There's nothing that could be done for them though, but try to offer some sort of comfort. Down in one of the chambers, I spotted the salamander prisoner and his host of guards. Attempting to get close, they tell me to stay away. Of course, my only option is to pay them off, but luckily, this time it's a mere 10 orans, the price of a coffee, as they say.
Stay away from the prisoner.
I want to ask some questions. Shh, he's talking.
Kalkstein. He's passed out. Shove off.
There's a commotion in the corridor.
Bloody thugs. Ram's meat sent them.
Even though that was brief, I feel like I learned more in those 10 seconds than I did in the last 15 minutes. The prisoner specifically called out Kalkstein, the alchemist I had saved back on the bridge. Furthermore, the guards identified these attackers as a Ramsmeat's men. Why would the underworld boss send so many thugs after one sick and dying man? Something's definitely up here. Together, the two guards and myself fought off the bandits and ironically saved the salamander lackey. I didn't think those words would ever come out of my mouth. After the tussle, my work in the hospital was done, at least for now. The next step for the investigation was to reconvene with Raymond. By now, he should have collected a great deal of information, and maybe, with what I had just discovered, we can start to piece this puzzle together.
So, I got to the prisoner.
He spill anything?
Didn't have time. Ramsmeat's men attacked.
You sure? Strange. Ramsmeat wants Salamandra gone, unless something I don't know about has occurred.
Javed might have scared him, or paid him off.
Something to check. Did you get anything out of the prisoner?
One word. Kalkstein.
Makes sense. Kalkstein's known to be a talented alchemist. He could be helping Javed with his experiments.
I've met Kalkstein. He didn't look the criminal.
That might be true, but we need to check all our leads. Let's get to work. I'll ask around town, talk to my contacts. You keep an eye on Kalkstein. Gain his trust. Get to know his plans and secrets.
How do you want to proceed?
Patience. This is just like fishing.
I prefer hunting.
Then gain Kalkstein's trust. Do him a favor. Learn something that interests him. You could get him to hire you. And talk to Ramsmeat, but don't overdo it. There's one with a short temper.
Unsurprisingly, the story leads me over to the chief suspects. Kalkstein is a bit surprising. He was a target for the salamander just outside of Vizima. Why now would he choose to actively work with them? Threats, money, research, there are too many possibilities and still a lot of doubt as well. As for Ramsmeat, his part in the story falls in line with all the others. When I get the chance, I should speak with him and apply the pressure. Although, Ramsmeat strikes me as a guy who doesn't bode well with pressure, so we'll see what comes of that. For now, the chapter leads me over to Kalkstein's residence. If you recall, I have a standing invitation with the alchemist, so I don't necessarily feel bad about bursting through his door in the middle of the night and asking some questions.
Finally, the Witcher Geralt answers my call.
We meet again.
I need your help again.
With what?
A grave matter. Something that could prove a milestone in alchemy. Connected to your profession, too.
Tell me more.
Sorry, I got lost in thought.
You had a job.
Help me fulfill my life's work. A tower stands in the forest swamp near old Vizima.
A princess up top, dragon below? Thanks, but I'll pass.
Silence, please. Legend says a mage and alchemist built the tower. No princesses or dragons.
So what's my job?
The mage died ages ago, and the tower was forgotten. The power within it attracted and deformed nearby creatures.
In short, it breeds monsters?
Precisely. I want to examine that source, Witcher, and write a dissertation certain to immortalize my name. I'll have access to secrets that have been hidden away in that tower for years. Unfortunately, the tower is locked. I'll pay 1,000 orens to whoever helps me get inside.
I'll see what I can do, though I'm sure this won't be easy.
Were it easy, I'd not need you. Breaking into a powerful mage's lab is complicated. We must gather detailed information on the tower.
Where do I find it?
In the tales and legends recounted by elders and swamp folk. In old books, too. Recorded wisdom is infinitely more reliable.
Any specific titles in mind?
Ransant Alvaro's The Secret Gates, and an alchemy treatise, Ain Soph Hour. I know a certain dwarf had a copy of The Secret Gates. The second book, written by an anonymous gnome, was lost long ago, and could be hard to find. While you search for these, you can test my newest invention, a crystal that links places of power and my workshop. It will allow you to teleport, disintegrating your being into billions of pieces that travel beyond the time-space curve.
And then it'll reassemble my being in your lab? Sure about this?
There is some chance of error, but it's minuscule.
Let's talk about Salamandra. I think you're in league with them.
What, me? Why?
That's what I'd like to know.
What is it you're after?
Evidence indicates you're linked to the organization.
What evidence?
The wounded salamander mentioned you.
That's likely, since I hired him.
What for?
To help with my experiments. I had no idea he belonged to a secret organization.
I suppose he distilled the fifth essence and dusted the Philosopher's Stone?
He protected me from Salamandra and did other tasks. He risked his life for me, and your sarcasm will not change that. Get out of my sight, mutant.
Again, these NPCs are excellent at deflecting and denying my accusations. Of course, it probably isn't that hard to do since I don't have concrete proof on any of them, but so far no dice. However, getting in league with Kalkstein could be exactly what I need. I'm not so sure what to make of this tower business, but it is considered a main quest and plays a major role in the chapter. For the time being, the only way forward is to gain Kalkstein's trust. So that means doing what Geralt's told and collecting those aforementioned books. On the northeastern side of town, there's the antiquarian, a dealer of antique and rare books. He'd be an excellent start for finding the texts on the tower. So, heading over to my free inn, aka Thaler's place, I meditated until midday, leveled up, and set back out for the vendor. Chatting with the dwarf, I asked him about possible books on the Swamp Tower. He specifically brought up The Secret Gates and Ain Soph Hour. Unfortunately, he doesn't have either of them in stock. However, he knows who has a copy of each. Goland Vivaldi, the owner of Vivaldi's Dwarven Bank, has the former. As for the latter, it's a little trickier to get a hold of. The dwarf suggests that I try some of the swamp folk out of town. That's the second NPC who's directed me to Vizima's swamps, and something tells me that sooner or later, I'll be making a trek out to the marshes. I'll worry about that possible expedition later though, but first it's off to Vivaldi's. The dwarf aristocrat has a home by Kalkstein, and going on inside, I seem to have shown up in the nick of time.
Get out!
What's going on?
We're arresting him for collaborating with terrorists.
Him? A Scoia'tael warrior?
His nephew was in the very unit the Order captured. The same unit that slaughtered villagers near Vizima.
No, it's a mistake. My nephew is young and foolish, not a murderer.
Was. He's hanging already. Before dying, he admitted contacting you. Glad we caught them before they managed that weapons shipment. Aaron, a true patriot, lost his life luring them into a trap. Gather your belongings, Vivaldi. You can grieve in the dungeon.
I wanted no part of the business between the Hawker and the Scoia'tael. The fools gave me no choice. Fearing the revenge of the Scoia'tael, Heron betrayed the whole unit. Probably thought he'd be safe, get a reward. The young non-humans will be carrion for ravens and crows. The only true victors in this conflict, for someone is sure to avenge the freedom fighters. Use their deaths, take just revenge for the cause. And the scavengers will be fat and sated. Ravens and crows.
Essentially, due to my actions against the Scoia'tael at the riverbank, I caused their mass execution. All of those non-human freedom fighters are hanging in the gallows, and Geralt holds a lot of the blame. Something that makes The Witcher's storytelling so special is that it shows the player the results of their actions. A lot of other fantasy games try to do this, but most fall flat and not a whole lot actually changes. However, for Geralt's journey, due to a small conflict with an obscure organization, I'm now dealing with repercussions a full chapter later. The butterfly effect kicked in, and a seemingly innocent dwarf has been arrested because of me. It's moments like those that truly leave me in awe at what CD Projekt Red has done here. As for what to do next, well, I still need to talk to Vivaldi. So, heading to Vizima's dungeon and chatting with Jethro, I asked to see the dwarf. Since Vivaldi was considered a political prisoner, the only way he was getting out was if someone had paid his bail. The count was set at 200 orens, and at this point, I was brainstorming some extra ways to earn cash. These bribes, expenses, and bails are really starting to add up.
What brings you here?
Do you have a copy of the Secret Gates?
I do, and what remains of my collection. It's yours if you want it.
How much?
You pulled me from prison. Take it as a gift.
I'm looking for the leader of a certain organization.
You suspect me because I'm a dwarf?
I have several suspects, not only dwarves.
What do you want?
I've got my eye on you.
Come back when you stop talking crap.
I want to discuss Salamandra.
Why?
The professor's bail money came from your bank.
You offend me deeply with this slander.
But...
generations of Vivaldis built this bank, and you suggest our gold serves criminals? Out!
It was worth a shot, and to be honest, I'm still highly suspicious of him. I feel as though Vivaldi offered the weakest defense against my claims. He just got angry and called Geralt's words slander. I understand he's had a tough day with wrongful imprisonment, but that doesn't change the fact that his bank was used to free a criminal. If he really wanted to get to the bottom of things, Vivaldi could look into the account that was used and who wired the money. But nope, he'd rather get angry and storm off. No matter, in the end, I managed to actually get both books, The Secret Gate and Ein Sof-Hour. I was under the impression that I'd be recovering the latter in the swamps, but hey, it saves me the trip. Giving them a read, both texts are quite detailed. The Secret Gate discusses the history of this mage, his experimental tower, and theories on his disappearance. As for Ein Sof-Hour, it's a little more cryptic. It's full of riddles, proverbs, and confusing passages. In the beginning, it talks about 10 mysterious cornerstones, and by the end of it names them off. I would give a summary for each book, but upon my next meeting with the alchemist, Geralt recites the details perfectly. Speaking of which, the next step to this quest is to report my findings to Kalkstein. Maybe by showing him the effort that I put in, he'll be a little more trusting and forthcoming.
About the tower.
Yes?
I have new information on the tower.
Tell me quickly.
Before this tower, the mage erected 2 others, but both collapsed. This one served as his house and lab.
I knew that. Anything more?
The mage lived there until he disappeared, most likely dead. He constructed clay golems that served him but hardly seemed a major achievement.
That would agree with the legends of the Sentry.
There are 10 cornerstones involving the elements and threads of fate from which all this was born.
Sephirah! So the old scrolls are true!
One book contained hints of the stone's whereabouts.
We must find all 10 Sephirot. I own one of them, Chokmah, the Stone of Wisdom.
I suppose I'm to find the others?
Yes. Near the tower, you'll find a circle of stone obelisks. When you have all 10 Sephirot, place them on the obelisks. Ah, so close. What a breakthrough. I'll abolish the theory of those stuffy professors in Oxenfort. I'll destroy them, smash them.
Kalkstein, don't get worked up until I find the stones, which won't be easy. The information in these books is murky at best.
Sorry, could you show me these books? I'll make notes for you.
Here.
There you are.
Well, for now, there's nothing more on Kalkstein and the Salamandra. However, I am able to report back to the Private Eye in order to discuss the Alchemist. Furthermore, Kalkstein's quest progresses, and now I'm to find the remaining Sephirot. I have one from the Alchemist himself, and somehow I've already come across the second in my travels. So that's 2 down and just 8 to go. Something tells me though that finding them won't be as simple as asking around. Well, not all of them will be that simple. You'll see what I mean shortly. Reading over the notes, they end up being Geralt's thoughts on Kalkstein's writings regarding the books, so they're read from a perspective of someone who's just as confused as I am. However, the notes are more like hints on where to go, who to talk to, and what to do in order to receive a specific stone. As would just so happen, most of these leads encourage Geralt to check out the swamps. So, the marshes are back on the schedule for this chapter. For now though, the quest marker leads me back into the hospital. At first, I wasn't quite sure why. After finding Shani and speaking with her, it got moved around, but referencing the notes on the Sephirot, I think I now know why I was brought here. Either way, Shani asked me about the little kerfuffle the other night, the one with Rams meets men. After explaining myself, she eased up a little and even shared some information of her own. The prisoner got moved to a safe location. She doesn't know where that is exactly, but rest assured, he should be out of harm's way. At least that was the goal. Chatting with Shani once more, just to see what else was new, she mentions a possible remedy to help with the plague. Not necessarily a cure, but something that helps to slow its effects. Celandine, the same ingredient that I used in Triss's potion, seems to be this magical extract. Surprise, surprise, guess where it grows? In swamps. I'll keep an eye out for these plants when I make my way over there, but for now, it's off to Raymond's house to touch base again. Entering the Private Eye's home, it appears as though he has himself some visitors. Assassins were now being sent after him. 4 thugs had cornered Marlove, and again, Geralt's timing couldn't have been any better. Together, Raymond and I killed his assailants and then right after, devised a game plan. For some reason, the cutscene went on, but my screen stayed black. Luckily, the subtitles were going and I could still hear everything. Basically, the Salamandra know that Raymond's been looking into them. It's because of that and the fact that he's working with Geralt that they're now trying to have him executed. It comes at a bad time too, as Raymond claims he was so close to solving the mystery. For now though, his #1 priority is getting Salamandra off his tail and then going dark. The Private Eye hands Geralt a list of suspects to look into and says that when the time's right, he'll reach out. So the chase continues, and so do the cycles of investigation. This time, the leads are Ramsmeet and some new merchant named Levarden. As would just so happen, Levarden also holds one of the 8 remaining Sephirah. So call it a 2 birds, 1 stone type of approach. Exiting Raymond's home, the adventure led me to Vizima's wharf, the area that was opened up by Siegfried. Running along the docks, I laid eyes on the merchant in question, Declan Levarden.
Yes?
I suspect you know about Salamandra.
I know nothing.
We'll see.
Can I return to my business?
We need to talk about your dealings with Salamandra. You paid to have the professor released.
Why would I bother with a criminal?
Why not?
Would I do it so clumsily as to implicate myself?
I don't believe you. I don't have any definitive proof, so I'll let it lie, for now.
Wise choice. You should trust your instincts more.
I seek the Sephirot stones. I haven't yet located them all. I thought you might know such art and oddities.
I once purchased one for its magical potential, which turned out false. And I paid a mage a costly sum for the examination.
Then would you sell it to me?
Sell my Tipparath? I'm rather fond of it.
I'll give you a good price.
500 orns?
I didn't think it was worth so much. But all right.
I wear Tipparath as an amulet. We can deal right now.
I have 500 orns, though it's quite a price to pay for a stone.
I sadly relinquish it, but my reputation would suffer, as would my business if I did not deal. The Sephirah is yours.
Even with a bold accusation, claiming Declan to be the one who released the professor from prison, the merchant still held strong. For now, there's not much more to go off of on his end, but I did manage to purchase a third Sephirah from him, even though it meant emptying out my coin purse. However, because of that find, I wouldn't say our little chit-chat was for nothing. Only 7 more stones to go. Continuing with the Salamandra investigation, my next suspect was Ramsmeat over at the Hairy Bear Tavern. I've had brief dealings with him and even survived a surprise attack from his thugs. Now it was time to get the truth out of him, or at least some other piece of information that I could go off of. I will say though, entering the inn, I was briefly waylaid by another NPC. He's been on my radar for quite some time, and it relates back to the beginning of the chapter. The gambler in the tavern knows something about the Witcher's silver sword, which possibly relates back to Berengar, or someone else entirely. According to the gambler, he won it from a gardener who works at the hospital. You see what I mean when I said this chapter will have me bouncing around from person to person and place to place? It's one long game of telephone, but to be honest, I'm hooked. The story is unraveling at a slow but exciting pace. Every twist and turn has some element of surprise and thrill to it. Again, a testimony to the Witcher's excellent storytelling. From the gambler, I moved on to the real reason I traveled back to the inn, to interrogate Ramsmeat.
What do you want, Wolf?
Ever seen the Salamandra sign?
I've seen a lot. Have a problem with that?
Best tell me all you know. The name Azar mean anything?
I have a rule. Before I slit someone's throat, I give them some advice. Never threaten me. Make sure you remember that. I mean, image is everything, right?
I need to talk to you about Salamandra.
Quickly.
When I ask about Salamandra, your henchmen get shifty.
They're like me. We don't like Salamandra.
And I'm a priestess of Melitelli.
You're either very brave or very foolish to accuse me.
Neither, Ramsmeat.
You should have asked my men why they get nervous. Now shove off.
Why did you contact Witcher Berengar?
What's it to you?
He was my brother.
Take a good look. Do I seem like a whore to you?
No.
So why you trying to fuck me? Again, what's it to you?
He was a friend. I suspect Salamandra had something to do with his disappearance.
You choose your friends poorly. Berengar schemed with Salamandra, and that's why we had our eye on him. As they say, keep your friends close, and your enemies closer. He disappeared in the swamp. Kalstein hired one of my boys to find him. Then he disappeared. That's all. Now get lost.
Your people attacked me at the hospital.
You cracked? I sent them there to bring back one of ours.
At this point, someone has to be lying to me. Everyone has some convenient excuse as to why they've meddled in my investigation on the Salamandra. Kalkstein and Ramsmeat seem to be at odds with their stories. The alchemist claims that he hired the thug for protection and assistance, but didn't know he was affiliated with the Salamandra. Then Ramsmeat tells me his intentions were to rescue one of his men. Was he referring to the thug or someone else entirely? I don't have proof on anyone yet, but the investigation keeps leading me back to these two. I won't count Vivaldi, Dollar, or Levarden out yet, but as of right now, their names haven't come up nearly as much as the alchemists and ringleaders. Exiting the tavern, the ball continues to roll as I'm approached by a little boy. He claims to be a messenger of Raymond's, and the message is simple: meet the private eye back at his home at my earliest convenience. Well, with nothing more to do except head for the swamp, which I'm building up to, I shot straight for Marlowe's place. It was good to see the detective alive and in one piece. I was 50-50 on if I'd actually be meeting with him again, but here we are.
Welcome, you won't believe what happened.
Tell me.
Not so fast. Remember, I have expenses.
How much do I owe you?
200 orens.
This investigation is getting expensive.
I'm not the prophet Lebioda. I can't live on roots and berries. Neither can my informers. I guarantee you these are the bare necessities.
All right, 200 orens.
Down to business. They transferred the prisoner after the attack.
Not good.
Especially since we won't get anything else out of him. He died last night.
How did that happen?
Well, he wasn't in great shape, so I guess it's no surprise, but I have a feeling.
Someone helped him along?
Exactly. Shawnee's a good friend of yours, right? Ask her to do an autopsy, once we know the cause of death.
Wait a minute. Are you spying on me?
That's my job.
See you later.
Strange that Marlov is also keeping tabs on me, but I suppose he said it best. Better to have open tabs on everyone involved. Similar to my adventures with Kalkstein, this development puts a roadblock in the investigation. The Salamander prisoner was our best shot at seeing who the guilty party was. You'd think that with his death, that information goes to the grave. However, said guilty party likely had a hand in his demise, ushering him to the afterlife a little too prematurely. If Geralt and Raymond are lucky, the killer can be revealed through the prisoner's autopsy. Poison, stab wound, strangulation, whatever the cause of death is, just about any finding should be able to pinpoint who the Salamander's accomplice is. Wasting no time, I shot over to Shawnee's place, dealt with her grandmother, who this time was actually quite pleasant, and woke up my friend from her hard-earned slumber.
Yes?
Shawnee, I wanted to ask you something.
Mm-hmm.
I need your help with an autopsy.
An autopsy? Since when do you deal with stuff like that?
Since I started investigating Salamandra.
Okay, though, I'm no coroner. You'll have to interpret our findings. We'll meet in the evening. Until then, gather as many clues as possible.
I'll sniff around.
Get the body from the gravedigger. We'll meet at the hospital in the evening.
How do I find information to help the autopsy?
Ask Vincent Mice, but also look for books on anatomy and pathology.
Farewell.
Alright, now we're getting somewhere. In about 24 or so hours, all should be revealed. Following Shawnee's instructions, I went to go learn how to study a dead body. Admittedly, I was a little confused at first on where this quest, Anatomy of a Crime, was leading me to. It ushered me to the southeastern corner of the Temple District. Here, I got to do a bit of sightseeing. I passed by the Order of the Flaming Roses HQ, as well as the gallows that housed the Scoia'tael's rotting corpses. I guess in classic fantasy fashion, the officials left the bodies hanging in order to instill fear amongst the rest of the non-humans. Try to be like the freedom fighters, end up like the freedom fighters. Again, I felt a bit bad about my involvement, but I suppose Herrenbrog was the one who cut the final cord. Now, as for my confusion, the quest marker was leading me over to Vizima Cemetery. This in and of itself was a whole thing. There were a handful of ghouls lurking around the graveyard's entrance, and of course, my presence had caught their attention. This brought them closer to the Order's HQ, and it also lured over a wraith. Seeing a monster with other monsters, I assumed it to be evil, so I got some licks in on the wraith. Well, as it would turn out, the entity was friendly. Attacking it ended up bringing some unwanted attention onto Geralt, and it slowly devolved into making an enemy out of the Order. While I was pretty sure there was, quote, friendly fire, or at least the ability to commit crimes, I suppose I found out at an inopportune time. Wiping out the city guardsmen as well as the Order's knights, I felt pretty good about my combat skills. However, I was now a wanted man and wasn't sure where all this fighting was going to lead to. So, accidental experiment to the side, I reverted my save, cautiously defeated the correct foes, and began to have a look around. Geralt made a comment on how the cemetery likely had a whole host of dead and undead things in there. This was great, as I needed access to the prisoner's body. However, the cemetery was locked and I didn't know where I could find a key. Well, as it would turn out, I've actually encountered this problem before. The quest marker just shows the player where they need to go in order to progress with the quest. If it's an NPC you need to speak with, that's where they'll be. One crucial thing to keep in mind though, the time of day. Some NPCs are only present at specific times. For example, the Gravedigger, the one man who could locate the prisoner's body for me, only works while the sun's up. I had this exact same problem with the Antiquarian. It took me a little bit to actually find the dwarf, and that's because he's only out during the day. At least, he was only in his marked spot during the daytime. I have no clue if these NPCs can be found elsewhere in the night. Well, for the time being, I could at least focus on searching for some medical-related books to help with the autopsy. The most obvious one I can get a hold of was Forensic Medicine. Dollar was selling a copy of it, and while I could have compared pricing with the Antiquary, the Fence's services were just too convenient here. Reading it over, the book gives a basic overview of what to expect from an autopsy, how to conduct it, and what you might get out of it. Really, it helps with the optics and lore. While around Dollar's place, I took the liberty of resting for the night. At daybreak, I went out and found Vincent Mice. According to Shawnee, he might have some information on how to examine a body.
What is it, Witcher?
You ever do autopsies?
What for? Punctured stomachs mean gang warfare. Torn off heads mean beasts. And black tongues mean poison. The first case, we pressure ram's meat. The second, we pass on to the Order or a Witcher. The third, we go to the victim's wife. The culprit 90% of the time. Autopsies are a waste of time.
At first, Vincent's insight doesn't seem very insightful. However, believe it or not, there is one detail he mentioned that will actually prove incredibly useful for the autopsy. While there are a few more books and texts out there, I felt like I was ready to get this show on the road. Hoofing it back to the cemetery, the gravedigger was finally out and about. I bet he has no clue just how much effort I went through to find him.
What'll it be? Pine or oak, perhaps? An entire crypt? Let's see, 5 ells wide.
What are you talking about?
Why would you come to a gravedigger? So I ask you, who will you be burying? Fear not, my prices are reasonable.
I'm here for another reason.
You should plan ahead. Very well. What is it you want?
Could you hand over the prisoner's body for an autopsy?
For a bottle of dwarven liquor.
The continent is fueled off of cheap bargains. No one can do anything out of the kindness of their heart. But you know what? I'm being hypocritical as Geralt does the exact same thing. Innocent lives need saving. How much coin are you willing to offer? I know it's his job. Being a Witcher is literally a skilled trade. But then you see the Order of the Flaming Rose and how they operate. I wonder if in due time they'll completely shut the Witchers out. After all, there are plenty of chapters still left in the game and 2 more installments to go. So maybe I'll get to find out. Either way, when I heard dwarven liquor, my mind immediately went to the tavern. As far as I can tell, they're the only ones who sell alcohol. Or at the very least, they'll have the most options available. Speaking with the waitress and steering clear of her advances, I managed to find a bottle of Mahacommon mead. According to the flavor text, this is considered to be the dwarves' greatest contribution to the world. Let's just hope it's good enough for the gravedigger. Returning to the cemetery, I handed the hard-working fellow the bottle and tried again to get the corpse exhumed.
A prisoner died recently. Is he in the cemetery already?
Don't know. You can have another body. They all reek the same.
I'm after a specific corpse.
Particular. Come back when you know what you want. Examining remains is an art. Always worthwhile to look deeper. But who does that concern? Nothing like a good drink.
About the prisoner.
Where you want the body dumped?
At the hospital.
It'll be there by evening.
Farewell.
With that, all the pieces are set into place. Now it's just a matter of meeting Shawnee after hours and taking a look at the corpse. Just because I was curious, I paid a visit to the hospital during daylight. Shawnee wasn't here, which I figured that meant she was preparing for the big autopsy. Oddly enough though, the body of the salamander prisoner was already in the hospital's back room. I guess the gravedigger's more efficient than I thought. It's funny, the character model looks a bit different. The alive prisoner was bald and had other clothing on. Rest assured this would be who Geralt and Shawnee could open, but it was just a little strange to see. I suppose at times the Witcher shows its age. In any case, resting at Thaler's place until nightfall, I returned to Lebioda's and this time, the space was cleared of all its workers. The only people in here were the sick, nothing could be done about that, but also me and Shawnee. Running to the back, the medic was waiting for me.
Ready for the autopsy?
Let's get started.
For as long as Geralt doesn't talk to her again, Shawnee continues to pour the same liquid into 2 different vials over and over. At first, I assumed this to be part of the researching process. However, after waiting here for an embarrassingly long time, turns out that I just needed to speak with her.
Race, human. Gender, male. Wounds, extensive.
Shawnee, this isn't a lecture hall.
Whatever you say. He died yesterday, torn to pieces.
A werewolf?
The moon's shining. Wouldn't he turn into a lycanthrope?
I guess.
Geralt, no need to test me. I'm a professional. Moving on.
Could a human have inflicted these wounds?
Only with a 2-foot jaw.
The bone marrow has been sucked out. Must be scavengers.
Very likely. Plenty around the cemetery.
So, he was torn to pieces after he died. I'm interested in the cause of death.
I also see some stab wounds. A blade 2 fingers wide.
Something's wrong. His head's in an unnatural position, his hands twisted.
The wounds can't explain that.
Some kind of fit?
No indication of other symptoms.
Poison, maybe. But then why would someone stab him?
We'll find out. Let's check his internal organs.
Learning from my recent mistake, I wasted no time on this one and spoke with Shawnee immediately.
He wasn't killed with a weapon. What next?
Let's see the lungs.
As I suspected, he didn't die from stab wounds.
Let's look at the heart.
The blade severed the aorta, but internal bleeding is limited.
So the heart stopped beating long before?
Precisely. Someone stabbed a dead body.
Check the liver.
Completely cirrhotic. A strong poison affected the nervous system. Practically unavailable.
For an alchemist?
A gifted alchemist could obtain it.
I need proof.
Alchemical poisons cause certain changes.
Things are not looking good for Ramsmeat or Kalkstein, two suspects that were high on mine and Raymond's list. This last part is what could potentially be the final nail in the coffin.
Look, the tongue was crudely extracted, but not all the blackened tissue was removed.
Blackened?
Yes, the poison caused necrosis of the tongue, so the murderer removed it.
So we're certain a gifted alchemist is the murderer.
A gifted alchemist who's a crappy surgeon.
Kalkstein. He wanted to implicate the bandits, but he failed to foresee a professional autopsy. Thanks, Shawnee. That's the evidence I needed.
Good. I'm exhausted.
Well, it looks as though the results are in. Kalkstein is the guilty party. He killed the bandits, likely so he wouldn't squeal about their affairs. Admittedly, it does still feel like a strange accusation. Unless he was lying to Geralt, which could 100% be the case, he's one of the few suspects who actually offered any sort of explanation for his connection to the Salamandra. Now, why would the prisoner's body have stab wounds? It's even stranger that said wounds were apparently inflicted after his death. As the story goes, I guess Kalkstein tried to frame Ramsmeat, threw everyone off of his trail, and then cut out the tongue to remove any evidence of foul play. It's certainly a possibility, but I'm personally still a little skeptical. It's hard to say, but this discovery has moved things along. I need to go and pressure Kalkstein for a confession, I need to report back to Raymond and tell him what I've learned, plus I can inform Ramsmeat that he's been ruled out as a suspect. So much has happened so far in this chapter, and yet it feels like there's still so much more to do. What becomes of this mystery, and how far does it end up going?